The ship was dying. Lyra knew this because she could feel it in the walls. The metal groaned like a wounded animal. The lights flickered every few minutes. The air tasted wrong, like burnt metal and fear. She held her baby close to her chest and ran. All around her, others were running too. Mothers with children, fathers carrying the old and sick, young ones who had never seen war now seeing nothing but fire and death. The corridors of the Morning Star were filled with screaming and crying and the terrible sound of hope dying. Lyra's baby Tal was only 3 months old. He was small even for an infant. His skin, which should have glowed with soft silver light, was dim and gray. He had been crying since the bombs fell on there. That was 4 days ago. 4 days of running, 4 days of hiding, 4 days of watching everything she knew turn to ash. She reached the cargo bay where thousands of refugees had gathered. The room was massive, but it felt small with so many bodies pressed together. Did not like to be close to each other. Their culture taught them that distance was respect. Touch was pain. Personal space was sacred. But there was no space here. Only bodies and fear and the endless crying of children. Lyra found a corner and pressed her back against the cold wall. She looked down at Tal. His small mouth was open. His tiny hands were clenched into fists. He screamed, and she did not know how to make him stop. "Hush, little one," she whispered. Her voice broke. "Please, please be quiet." But Tal did not hear her. Or maybe he heard her and did not care. He was too young to understand words. He only understood feelings, and the feelings around him were dark and heavy and wrong. The ship shook. Lyra grabbed the wall to keep from falling. Through the small window above her she could see the debris field. Pieces of ships floated past. Some of them were still burning. Beyond the debris she could see the ghost of her planet. It was gray now. The bombs had burned away the blue and green. Everything she had ever known was gone. She closed her eyes and tried to remember her home. The garden behind her house. The smell of flowers in the morning. Her mother's voice singing old songs. But the memories felt far away, like dreams she could not quite hold. Tal's crying pulled her back to the present. A voice came through the ship's speakers. It was the captain, an old with a tired voice. "We have made contact with a human vessel," the captain said. "They have agreed to take us aboard. Prepare for docking." Lyra did not know much about humans. She had heard stories, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories about the strange creatures from the small blue planet called Earth. They were young as a species. They had only been traveling among the stars for a few hundred years, but in that short time they had made themselves known. Some said humans were dangerous. They were warriors who loved to fight. They had a history of violence that made other species nervous. Their planet was covered in the scars of their wars against each other. But others said humans were kind. They helped those in need. They built hospitals on distant worlds. They sent food to starving colonies. They were confusing creatures who could destroy and heal with equal passion. Lyra did not care if they were dangerous or kind. She only cared that they had a ship with working air and food and maybe, a quiet place where her baby could rest. The docking took an hour. Lyra felt the ships connect with a deep metallic sound. Then the doors opened and she saw humans for the first time. They were shorter than. Their skin did not glow. They had strange hair on their heads and faces. Their eyes were small and came in different colors. They wore uniforms of dark blue and gray, and they carried tools and weapons on their belts. One human stood at the front of the group. He was not the tallest, but something about him made Lyra look twice. His face was calm. His eyes moved across the crowd of refugees with something that looked like sadness. He had black hair cut short and a small scar on his chin. "I am Sergeant Park," he said. His voice came through a translator device, turning his strange human sounds into words Lyra could understand. "Welcome aboard the Soul's Promise. You are safe now." Safe? Lyra wanted to laugh. She wanted to cry. She was not sure she remembered what safe felt like. The humans moved among the refugees, guiding them through the corridors of their ship. Lyra followed the crowd, holding Tal against her shoulder. He was still crying. His small body shook with each scream. Others looked at her with pity and something else. Annoyance, maybe. Fear. A crying baby was bad luck in culture. It meant the child was touched by darkness. Lyra ignored them. She had no energy for their superstitions. The humans gave their own section of the ship. It was a large cargo area that had been cleared and filled with sleeping mats and blankets. There were stations for food and water. Medical supplies were stacked in one corner. It was not comfortable, but it was better than the dying morning star. Lyra found a spot near the back wall. She sat down on a thin mat and tried to feed Tal, but he would not eat. He only cried. "Please," she begged. "Please, my little one, I do not know what you need." But Tal did not answer. He could not answer. He was only a baby, lost in a world of sounds and feelings he could not understand. Hours passed. The cargo bay grew quieter as refugees settled into exhausted sleep. But Tal's crying continued. It echoed off the metal walls. It filled the darkness like a living thing. Lyra rocked him. She sang to him. She walked in circles until her legs ached. Nothing worked. Other refugees began to complain. An old male approached her with angry eyes. "Control your child," he said. "We are all suffering. We do not need this noise." "I am trying," Lyra said. Tears ran down her face. "I do not know what is wrong with him." "Then take him somewhere else, away from the rest of us." Lyra wanted to argue. She wanted to scream at him that her baby was not a burden, that he was scared and confused and grieving in the only way he knew how. But she had no strength left for anger. She picked up Tal and walked to the far edge of the cargo bay, as far from the others as she could get. She sat with her back against the cold wall and held her crying son and wondered if she would ever feel warm again. Through the observation window she could see a human soldier walking past. It was the one from before. "Sergeant." He paused and looked through the window. His eyes found her in the darkness. For a moment they just looked at each other. Then he moved on. Lyra closed her eyes. Tal screamed against her chest. And somewhere in the cold emptiness of space, the last pieces of her world burned away to nothing. She did not sleep that night. She was not sure she would ever sleep again. 3 days passed on the human ship. 3 days of gray walls and recycled air and the endless hum of engines. 3 days of Tal's crying. Lyra had stopped counting the hours. Time had become a blur of exhaustion and despair. She ate when someone brought her food. She drank when someone put water in her hands. But she did not sleep. She could not sleep. Every time her eyes closed, Tal's screaming pulled her back. The healers had examined him twice. They ran their scanners over his small body and looked at the results with confused faces. "There is nothing wrong with him," the head healer said. She was an old female named with skin that had faded from silver to pale gray with age. "No illness, no injury, no infection. He is physically healthy." "Then why does he cry?" Lyra asked. Her voice was hoarse from singing and pleading and crying herself. Shook her head. "I do not know. Perhaps it is trauma. He was born into war. He has never known peace. His mind may be damaged in ways our machines cannot see." Damaged? The word hit Lyra like a blow. Her baby was damaged. Her beautiful, innocent baby who had done nothing wrong. "What can I do?" she asked. "Keep him warm, keep him fed." Wait, paused. Her eyes were not unkind, but there was distance in them. "Some children are born under dark stars, Lyra. It is not your fault, but it may not be something you can fix." Lyra wanted to scream at her. She wanted to shake the old healer and demand better answers, but was already walking away, moving to help other refugees who had problems she could actually solve. The cargo bay had grown tense. Were patient people, but 3 days of constant crying had worn them down. Parents moved their children to the far side of the room. Elderly refugees complained to anyone who would listen. A group of young males had started calling Tal the Cursed One when they thought Lyra could not hear. She could hear, she heard everything. Sergeant walked past the observation window again. He did this several times a day. His rounds, the other humans called it. He was responsible for security, for making sure the refugees were safe and behaving well. Lyra had noticed that he always slowed down when he passed her corner. He would look through the window with those strange human eyes, watching her rock her crying baby. Sometimes he would stand there for a full minute before moving on. She did not know what to make of him. Humans were impossible to read. Their faces moved too much. Their bodies were always shifting and adjusting. They were warm-blooded creatures, full of energy and heat, nothing like the cool stillness of the... On the fourth night, Lyra collapsed. She did not mean to. One moment she was standing, swaying with Tal in her arms, and the next moment she was on the floor. Her body had simply stopped working. 4 days without sleep, barely eating, constantly stressed, even had limits. Other refugees gathered around her. Someone took Tal from her arms, but he screamed louder at the unfamiliar touch. Another tried to hold him, but he twisted and cried until they gave him back to his mother. Lyra lay on the cold floor, too weak to move. Tal lay beside her, his small body shaking with sobs. She reached out and touched his face with trembling fingers. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry, my little one." The commotion attracted attention. Through her blurred vision, Lyra saw humans approaching the cargo bay door. There were 3 of them, 2 she did not recognize. The third was Sergeant. He spoke quickly with his translator. "What happened? Is she injured?" One of the elders stepped forward. "She collapsed. Exhaustion. The child will not stop crying and she will not rest." Looked at Lyra, then at the baby. His face did something complicated that they could not understand. In human terms, it was concern mixed with frustration mixed with a deep, aching sympathy. "Why will the child not stop crying?" he asked. "We do not know," the elder said. "The healers say there is nothing physically wrong, but he cries day and night, without pause." "Has anyone tried to help her?" The elder's face flickered with a pale orange light. Confusion. "Help how? The child cries, we cannot stop it. Only the mother can care for the child." Was quiet for a moment. Lyra watched him through half-closed eyes. She could see him thinking, his human mind working through problems in ways her exhausted brain could not follow. "On Earth," he said slowly, "when a baby cries and the mother is too tired, others help. Family, friends, neighbors. They hold the baby so the mother can rest." They stared at him. Several of them flickered with the gray-blue light of discomfort. "We do not touch children who are not our own," the elder said. "It is not proper, it causes distress." "Distress to whom?" "To everyone. Touch is difficult for us. It is intimate, overwhelming. We touch only those we are bonded to, and even then rarely." Looked at the crying baby again. Lyra saw something change in his eyes, a decision being made. "I understand," he said, but his voice suggested he did not understand at all. He turned and left with the other humans, they returned to their places. Someone helped Lyra sit up, but they did not touch her longer than necessary. They brought her water and food and left her alone with her screaming son. The hours passed. Night cycle came to the ship and the lights dimmed. Most of the refugees fell into restless sleep. But Tal cried on, his voice growing hoarse and weak but never stopping. Lyra held him against her chest. Her arms shook with fatigue. Her mind drifted in and out of consciousness. She was breaking. She could feel herself breaking, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. She looked up at the observation window. Sergeant was there again. He stood very still, watching. His face was hard to see in the low light, but she thought she could see something in his expression. He was not just watching, she realized. He was thinking, planning, deciding. Their eyes met through the glass. Lyra did not know what she looked like to him. A pathetic alien mother failing her child, probably. a problem he could not solve, a creature from another world who could not even keep her own baby quiet. But did not look away. He stood there for a long time, longer than he ever had before, and when he finally moved, he did not continue on his patrol. He walked toward the cargo bay door. Lyra watched him approach. Her heart, slow and cold in her chest, began to beat a little faster. She did not know why. She did not know what he was going to do. But something in the air had changed. Something was about to happen. The door opened. Sergeant stepped inside. They scattered like startled birds when the human soldier entered the cargo bay. They moved away from him, pressing themselves against walls and into corners. Their skin flickered with pale yellows and grays. Fear, confusion, alarm. Humans did not enter the refugee section. It was understood, unspoken but clear. They needed space. They needed distance. The humans had respected this for days. But now Sergeant walked across the cargo bay like he belonged there. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. His eyes were fixed on Lyra and her crying baby in the far corner. Lyra tried to stand, but her body refused. She could only watch as the human approached. Tal screamed in her arms, his small voice raw and broken but still loud enough to fill the silence left by the fearful refugees. Stopped in front of her. Up close, he looked different than she expected. Younger, tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and she realized he had not been sleeping well either. Had her baby's crying reached even the human sections of the ship? "May I?" he asked. He gestured at Tal with one hand. Lyra did not understand. "May you what?" "May I hold him?" The words made no sense. Lyra stared at the human, trying to find meaning in his strange face. Hold him, hold her baby, a stranger touching her child. The thought was wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. Every instinct she had screamed against it. "You cannot," she said. "It will hurt him. Touch is pain for us, especially for children, especially from strangers." Nodded slowly. "I know," your elder explained, but he paused, searching for words. "On Earth, we believe touch can also heal. Bobbies need to be held, they need warmth, they need to feel another heartbeat." "We are not like you," Lyra said, but even as she spoke, she looked down at her son. He had been crying for 5 days. Nothing had helped. Nothing had changed. The healers said there was nothing wrong with him, but clearly something was very wrong. "I know you are not like us," said, "but look at him, Lyra. What you are doing is not working. What your people are doing is not working. Let me try something different." He said her name. She did not know how he knew it, but hearing it in his strange human voice made something shift inside her. He saw her as a person, not just a refugee, not just an alien problem to be managed. "It will hurt him," she said again, but her voice was weaker now. "Maybe," said, "or maybe it will help. We will not know unless we try." Lyra looked at her baby. His face was wet with tears. His small body shook with each sob. He was exhausted. She was exhausted. They were both dying slowly, broken by a grief they could not escape. She thought about the stories she had heard about humans. They were warriors, yes. They fought with terrible fury, but they were also something else. They raised their children differently. They touched constantly, held constantly, kissed and hugged and carried their young everywhere. Human bobbies spent most of their first year pressed against their parents' bodies. Maybe that meant something. Maybe it meant nothing. But she had nothing left to lose. Slowly, with shaking arms, Lyra lifted Tal toward the human soldier. Gasps filled the cargo bay, turned to watch in horror. Some covered their eyes, unable to witness what they believed would be agony. Others whispered prayers to old gods who had not saved their world. Took the baby. Lyra watched her son's face, waiting for the scream of pain that would come from an outsider's touch, waiting for Tal to thrash and fight against the strange creature holding him. But the scream did not come. Held the infant against his chest. He positioned Tal's head against his shoulder, one hand supporting the small back, the other cradling the tiny body. He held him firmly but gently, like someone who had done this many times before. Tal's crying began to change. The screams became whimpers, the whimpers became soft sounds, the soft sounds became silence. Lyra stopped breathing. The entire cargo bay stopped breathing. Tal's small body, which had been rigid with tension for 5 days, began to relax. His tiny hands, which had been clenched into fists, slowly opened. His face, twisted with endless distress, smoothed into something like peace. He was not screaming. He was not crying. He was listening. Began to hum. It was a simple tune, something from his own world, his own childhood. A song his grandmother had sung to him long ago in a city called, on a planet very far from here. The melody was strange to ears, but there was something in it that needed no translation. Comfort, safety, love. Lyra watched in amazement as her son's eyes slowly closed. His breathing deepened. His small body rose and fell with each breath, matching the rhythm of the human heartbeat beneath his ear. For the first time in 5 days, Tal slept. Continued to hum. He swayed slightly, a gentle rocking motion that seemed to come naturally to him. His eyes were closed too, focused on the feel of the small life in his arms. Minutes passed. The cargo bay remained silent. Who had complained about the crying now stared in disbelief. Elders who had called the child cursed now looked at each other with confusion. Lyra reached out and touched the sleeping face of her son. He did not wake. He did not flinch. He simply slept on, held in the arms of a human stranger. "How?" she whispered. Opened his eyes. He looked at her with an expression she could not read. "I do not know," he said honestly, "but I think he needed something your people could not give him." "What?" Thought about the question. He was a soldier, not a scientist. He did not have fancy words or complicated theories. He only had what he felt. "Warmth," he said finally. "Wait, the feeling of being held by something solid and warm. We are loud creatures. Our hearts beat slow and strong. Our bodies run hot. When we hold something, it knows it is being held." He looked down at the sleeping baby. "Maybe your people's touch is different. Lighter, cooler, electric, beautiful in its own way, but not what a frightened baby needs." He paused. He was alone in there, alone in his own skin. He needed to feel something outside himself, something heavy and warm and real. Lyra did not fully understand, but she understood enough. Her people valued distance. They valued space. They touched rarely and carefully. Even mothers held their babies loosely, respectfully, giving them room to breathe. But maybe room to breathe was not what Tal needed. Maybe he needed the opposite. Maybe he needed to feel surrounded, protected, held so tightly that nothing bad could reach him. Maybe he needed something human. Sat down on the floor, his back against the wall. He kept Tal against his chest, still humming softly. The baby did not stir. "You should sleep," he said to Lyra. "I will hold him." "For how long?" "As long as he needs, as long as you need." Lyra wanted to argue. She wanted to take her son back, to be the one who protected him. But her body was broken with exhaustion. Her mind was clouded with days of sleeplessness. And for the first time since the bombs fell, her baby was at peace. She lay down on the cold mat beside the human soldier. She watched her son sleep against his chest. She listened to the strange human song that seemed to fill the darkness with something like hope. And finally, she closed her eyes. The cargo bay was quiet. The refugees slept. And in the dim light of the ship's night cycle, a human soldier held an alien baby and sang songs from a world very far away. It was strange, it was impossible, it was beautiful. And it was only the beginning. Lyra woke to silence. For a moment, she did not know where she was. The ceiling above her was gray metal. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and too many bodies. Her back ached from sleeping on a thin mat on a hard floor. Then she remembered, the ship, the refugees, her baby. She sat up quickly, her heart racing. Where was Tal? Where was her son? She found him immediately. He was exactly where she had left him, cradled against the chest of the human soldier. Sergeant had not moved. He sat against the wall, his head tilted back, his eyes closed. His breathing was slow and deep. He had fallen asleep, holding her baby. Tal was awake. His silver eyes were open, staring up at the human face above him. But he was not crying. He was not screaming. He was simply looking, his small hands resting on the fabric of the human's uniform. Lyra stared at them. The sight was so strange, so impossible that she could not process it. Her people never touched strangers. They never allowed strangers to hold their children. The very idea was wrong, disturbing, a violation of everything they believed. But looking at her son's peaceful face, she could not feel anything but gratitude. She reached out and touched Tal's cheek. He turned his head toward her, and for the first time in 5 days, she saw something in his eyes that was not fear. Recognition, calm, the beginning of a smile. The movement woke. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking in the bright lights of the morning cycle. When he saw Lyra, he straightened up. "Good morning," he said. His voice was rough with sleep. "How do you feel?" "Better," Lyra said, and it was true. For the first time in days, she felt like a living creature instead of a walking ghost. "How long did I sleep?" 12 hours maybe. I lost track." "You held him the whole time?" Looked down at the baby in his arms. He woke up a few times, started to fuss, but when I hummed to him, he calmed down again. He smiled slightly. He likes music, or maybe just the vibration, I am not sure. Lyra did not know what to say. This human had sat on a cold floor for 12 hours, holding an alien baby so that she could rest. It was an act of kindness so simple and so profound that it broke something inside her. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you help us?" Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "I have a nephew back on Earth. He is about this age. When he was born, he cried all the time too. My sister was exhausted, so I would come over and hold him so she could sleep." He paused. "Babies need to be held. It is how they know they are safe. It is how they learn to trust the world." "But we are not your people. Tal is not your nephew." "No, but he is still a baby, and you are still a mother. That is enough." Word of what had happened spread quickly through the refugee section. Came to see for themselves. They stood at a distance, watching the human hold the alien child, whispering to each other in voices of confusion and wonder. The old healer was among them. She approached Lyra with cautious steps. "I heard the crying stopped," she said. "I came to check on the child." "He is well," Lyra said. "Better than well, he slept through the night." Looked at with uncertain eyes. The human did this by holding him. "Yes." The healer was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that surprised Lyra. "I would like to understand why." She ran her scanners over Tal while he remained in his arms. She took readings and measurements. She compared them to the data from before. "Interesting," she murmured. "What is it?" Lyra asked. "The child's stress hormones have dropped dramatically. His heart rate is slower. His body temperature has increased slightly." She looked at the human. "May I scan you as well?" Nodded, ran her device over his body, her eyes widening at the results. "Your body temperature is much higher than ours," she said. "Almost 4 degrees, and your heartbeat is remarkable, very slow, very strong, like a drum." "Is that unusual?" "For us, yes. Hearts beat quickly and lightly. Our bodies run cool. We generate very little heat." She paused, thinking. "When we hold each other, there is not much sensation. Our touch is electric but brief, fleeting." "But humans are different," Lyra said. She was beginning to understand. "Very different," confirmed. "When you hold this child, he feels your heat surrounding him. He feels your heartbeat like a constant rhythm, slow and steady. He feels your weight pressing down on him." She shook her head in amazement. "It is like being wrapped in a warm blanket while listening to music. For a frightened child, it must feel like being returned to the womb. The word spread further. By midday, the entire refugee population knew what had happened, and reactions were mixed. Some were grateful. They looked at the human soldier with new eyes, seeing not a dangerous warrior but a gentle creature capable of unexpected kindness. But others were disturbed. An elder named spoke out in the crowded cargo bay. "This is wrong," he said. His skin flickered with the purple light of disapproval. "We do not touch outsiders. We do not let outsiders touch our children. It goes against everything our people believe." The child stopped crying. Another voice replied, "Is that not more important?" "At what cost?" demanded. "We are losing ourselves, our world is gone, our people are scattered, and now we abandon our customs too, we let aliens hold our bobbies." The argument grew heated. Who had been too polite to speak now voiced their opinions. Some supported, others defended the humans' actions. The cargo bay filled with flickering lights of every color as emotions ran high. Watched the debate in silence. He had returned Tal to his mother hours ago, but the effects of his actions were still rippling through the refugee community. Lyra found him near the observation window, looking out at the stars. "I am sorry," she said. "I did not mean to cause trouble for you." "You did not cause trouble," he said. "I made my own choice." He turned to face her. "But I need to know, did it help? Is Tal better?" Lyra looked down at her son, sleeping peacefully in her arms for the first time since she could remember. His face was calm. His body was relaxed. He looked like a baby should look, not like a creature haunted by trauma. "Yes," she said, "he is better. I do not understand why, but he is better." Then it was worth it. They stood together, watching the stars pass by. The debate continued behind them, but neither of them looked back. Something had changed on the ship. Something had broken, or maybe something had opened. Lyra did not know which. But as she held her sleeping son, she knew one thing for certain. The humans were not what her people thought they were. They were not just warriors. They were not just builders and explorers. They were something else entirely. Something warm. The story of the human soldier and the crying baby spread beyond the cargo bay. It traveled through the corridors of the soul's promise like light through space. Human crew members heard it. Other refugee ships in the fleet heard it. Within days, everyone knew. At first, the reactions were cautious. The elders sent messages to human command, expressing concern about cultural boundaries. The human commanders sent back polite replies about respecting alien customs. But the crying did not stop for other bobbies. Tal was not the only child born into war and chaos. There were dozens of infants in the refugee section, many of them screaming through the long ship nights. Their mothers were exhausted. Their fathers were broken. The way of caring for children, with distance and respect and minimal touch, was not enough for bobbies who had known nothing but terror. A week after held Tal, another human entered the refugee section. Her name was. She was a private, young and small, with a round face and gentle eyes. She had heard about what Sergeant had done, and she had come to the cargo bay with a simple question. "Are there other bobbies who need holding?" They stared at her. Some looked away in discomfort. But one mother, a young female named, stepped forward. She was holding twin infants who had been crying for 3 days straight. "Please," said, her voice cracked with exhaustion. "Please, if you can help them, I am begging you." Took one baby in each arm. She sat down on the floor, positioned them against her chest, and began to rock gently. She hummed a song from her childhood, a lullaby about the moon and the sea. The twins quieted within minutes. The other humans began to come. Corporal, a tall man with a deep voice who walked the corridors at night with toddlers on his hip, pointing at stars through the windows and nomming Earth's constellations. Lieutenant, a medic who sang songs in a language they could not understand but felt in their bones. Sergeant Park, who returned again and again, holding any child who needed warmth. They watched in amazement. Human touch did not hurt. It was not cold or electric or overwhelming like touch. It was warm and heavy and steady. It wrapped around frightened children like a blanket. It filled the empty spaces inside them with something solid and real. The crying in the cargo bay grew less and less. Bobbies who had screamed for days now slept peacefully in human arms. Toddlers who had refused to eat now accepted food from human hands. Children who had nightmares now asked for human soldiers to sit beside them until they fell asleep. The elders did not know what to think. This went against everything they believed. Their culture taught that touch was intimate, dangerous, something to be avoided except with closest family. For 10,000 years, they had kept themselves apart, believing that distance was protection. But now they watched their children calm in the arms of strangers. They watched their bobbies smile for the first time in weeks. They watched exhausted mothers finally sleep. One night the oldest elder on the ship called a meeting. His name was Morin. He was nearly 300 years old and his skin had faded to almost white. He moved slowly, but his mind was still sharp. "I have watched the humans with our children," he said to the gathered. "I have seen things I never expected to see, and I must speak truthfully about what I have learned." The cargo bay fell silent. "We have always believed that touch is a wound," Morin continued. "That to hold another is to burden them with our weight, our heat, our presence. We taught our children to stand alone, to need nothing from anyone. We thought we were making them strong." He paused. His eyes moved across the crowd. "We were wrong." Gasps filled the room. Some flickered with the red light of anger. Others flickered blue with confusion. "The humans have shown us something we forgot," Morin said. "Children are not meant to stand alone. They are meant to be held. They are meant to feel the weight of love pressing down on them. They are meant to hear heartbeats and feel warmth and know, deep in their bones, that they are not alone in the universe." He looked toward the corner where Lyra sat with Tal. The baby was awake, looking around with curious eyes. He had not cried in days. "Our children have been alone for 10,000 years, Morin said. "Even when we held them at a distance. Even when we loved them, we kept ourselves apart. And they grew up strong, yes, but they also grew up cold." His voice dropped. "Perhaps it is time to learn a new way." The fleet reached the colony world 3 weeks later. It was a small planet, green and blue, similar enough to that it could sustain them. They named it New and began the slow work of building a new civilization. On the day of departure, Lyra brought Tal to the docking bay where the human ship would disconnect. Sargent was there, preparing for the next phase of his deployment. The humans would continue on, carrying supplies to other refugee groups, helping other species rebuild from war. Lyra approached him slowly. Tal was awake in her arms, reaching toward the human with tiny hands. "Thank you," she said. The words seemed too small for what she felt. "Thank you for everything." Smiled, "He looks healthy." He sleeps through the night now. He eats well, he smiles." Lyra paused. "I hold him differently than I used to, closer, the way you showed me." "Does it help?" "Yes, he is calmer when I hold him like that, and," she hesitated, "I am calmer too. I did not know how much I needed to feel him against me, to feel his weight in my arms." Nodded, he did not seem surprised. "On Earth," he said, "we have a word for that. We call it skin hunger. The need to touch and be touched. Bobbies have it strongest, but everyone has it. When we do not get enough touch, we become sad, sick, lost." "Skin hunger," Lyra repeated. The translator struggled with the phrase, but she understood the meaning. "I think my people have been hungry for a very long time." "Then maybe it is time to eat." Lyra laughed. It was the first time she had laughed since her world burned. The sound surprised her. Tal reached out his tiny hand toward. The human leaned closer and let the infant grip his finger. Tal held on tight, his silver eyes fixed on the strange creature who had given him peace. "Take care of him," said. "We will." Lyra looked at her son with new eyes. We will hold him now, the way you showed us. My people are learning." The ships separated. The humans went one direction, the went another, but something had changed between them. Something had opened that could never be closed. In the months that followed, the of new began to change their ways. Mothers held their bobbies closer. Fathers touched their children more often. Friends embraced when they met. Couples walked hand in hand. It was strange at first, uncomfortable, against every instinct they had been raised with, but with practice it became easier. With time it became natural. And the children born on new, the first generation to grow up with warmth and weight and constant touch, were different than any who had come before. They smiled more. They laughed more. They reached out to others instead of pulling away. They were still. They still valued peace and knowledge and the beauty of distant stars, but they were no longer alone in their skin. Across the galaxy, the story of the human soldier and the crying baby became a legend. Other species heard it and wondered. Some dismissed it as exaggeration. Others sought out humans to see if it was true. And in quiet moments, on ships and stations and colonies far from Earth, human soldiers continued to do what came naturally to them. They held frightened children. They sang songs from home. They shared their warmth with a cold universe that had never known it needed them. And everywhere they went, silence fell. Not the silence of emptiness or death. The silence of peace.